കുഴപ്പമില്ലായിരുന്നു. കാരണം ഓക്കെ, ഗുഡ് എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ്. ഓക്കെ. ബോറായിരുന്നു. ഓക്കെ. Because many a times we will enjoy with we will, yes, പെട്ടെന്ന് കഴിയും. We will enjoy with many of our friends, relatives, etc. So, we will have a lot of travel to relatives' homes, friends' home. Even for a few days, we will have a few outings and all. But now everything is restricted. Okay. Anyway, we will start today. We will complete sugarcane. Okay. In the last two classes, we have discussed about mainly about borers of sugarcane. And we completed borers of sugarcane. Though we have discussed about 7 or 8 borers, you have to remember mainly about the first 4 borers: shoot borer, internode borer, top borer, and stop borer. Others, Gurdaspur borer, Plassey borer, then root borer, green borer, that 4. They are minor. You just go through that and remember the scientific name. That's the only thing you have to do. Today, we will move on to subterranean pests and then we will move on to sucking pests. We have 2 subterranean pests. Both we have discussed several times, but we'll discuss it in a bit detailed in sugarcane because they are major pests in sugarcane. Hope my PPT is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So termites, most of the termites which we have studied belongs to the genus Odontotermus and Microtermus, the Odontotermus opisus and Microtermus OPC. So both are the genus which we are commonly see in the case of sugarcane also. So what is the planting material in a sugarcane? Can anyone say? You might have studied it in agronomy. What is the planting material in sugarcane? Sets. Okay. And nowadays there is a slight change in sugarcane cultivation. Earlier it was completely sets, but nowadays uh, uh, they use single node. The nodes, they chip the buds from the nodes and they will keep it in pro-trays, and the pro-tray raised seedlings are also transplanted now. That's maybe 10 years only this technology has come out. I don't know whether you have studied it or not. That they will remove a small portion of the bud, so that and they will keep it in pro-trays, and that pro-tray raised seedlings will be used for planting. So that is a new way of raising. So there are so many nurseries in those sugarcane growing tracts which supply. Sometimes farmers can also do this. They have a small tool to remove those buds. So it's an easy task. So whatever it may be, if you plant that sets, just like tapioca cuttings which we use for, but tapioca cuttings, what we normally do is we will plant it perpendicular at 90 degrees to the field. Here it is horizontal, laying flat on the ground. We will take a furrow, and in that furrow we will be planting the sets linearly, horizontally. So what these termites will do is, termites will attack the germinating bud. From each node there will be a bud. That from that bud the germination occurs. That bud, it will be damaged, and also it attacks from both the cut ends. Once you cut it, the sugarcane sets slowly starts drying, and the termite starts attacking from the cut ends, and it feeds on the inner content. As you all know, you might all have tasted sugarcane. Nowadays it's common to have sugarcane juice. Earlier, the sugarcane was usually available in festivals, temples, mosque, or church festivals. Like അമ്പലങ്ങളിലെ ഉത്സവങ്ങള്, പള്ളിപ്പെരുന്നാളുകൾ, ഇതിനൊക്കെയാണ് കരിമ്പ്. ഞാനൊക്കെ കണ്ടിട്ടുള്ള അങ്ങനെയാണ്. So കരിമ്പ് വരിക. So what you might have observed is, if you have taken a fresh sugarcane for eating, the outer rind is extremely hard, and the inner portion is the one which is extremely juicy, fleshy, which will consume. So what the termite will do is it will feed on the inner content, juicy inner content. What? While the outer rind portion, the hard rind portion will be remaining as such. So the entire inner portion will be fed by the termites and the outer rind will be hard rind will be remaining. And as you all know, whenever there is a termite infestation, the entire area will be filled with termite mud. So the entire set, once there is a termite infestation, will be filled with mud. Only the outer rind will be remaining. So the set will be fed by the termites. The buds will be damaged, and it will lead to poor germination because there won't be any bud. It will be completely eaten away by the termites. So it will lead to poor germination. Even if there is slight germination happening to the sets, it will slowly starts drying up because the entire set will be fed by the termites. So the germinating shoot will be slowly drying up, and it can be easily pulled out because there won't be any root. The entire roots, everything will be fed by the termites. So the plant dries up, it can be easily pulled out. And another thing is, it is common when there is a dry condition because termites prefer dry condition. You remember it. If there is a moisture, termite infestation will be there. So the dry condition, if there is moisture, termite infestation gets decreased. If there is a flooding and all, slight moisture favors termite multiplication, but if there is flooding, termite infestation decreases. So drought favors termite infestation, and severe in light soils. That means if sand content is more. If clay content is more, termite infestation again decreases. So this is what happens to termite. It attacks all stages from planting till the maturity. So at planting stage, it is very critical. It attacks the contents, feeds on the inner content. It will be filled with mud. Only the outer ring will be remaining. Germinating buds will be damaged, so that germination will be affected, and the sets. If germinating shoot gets dried up, it can be easily pulled out, and it is severe if there is a drought scenario, if drought is prevailing in the field. You can see it over here. I show more pictures. You can see the entire inside content of the case set is fed by the termites, and only the rind is remaining. See, the germinating shoot is dried up. The entire set is filled with mud. I will show another picture. See this. This is the clear-cut picture. You can see the outer rind only remaining, and the inner rind will be filled with mud, and you can see termites. Just like we prepare നമ്മൾ പുട്ടുണ്ടാക്കുന്ന പോലെ പുട്ടിന്റെ കുമ്പത്തിലേക്ക് ഇത് പൊടി നിറയ്ക്കുന്ന പോലെയാണ്. It will be entire thing will be filled with mud. So this is done damage, and in later stages also, when once the crop matures also, the plant can be damaged by termites. That's severe when there is a drought condition prevailing, and the entire root, everything will be damaged. Plant will get dried up, and it can be easily pulled out. So as I told you, providing water, flooding is one typical strategy for managing termites. So providing flood irrigation at the time of planting is one management practice. And another thing is to go for set treatment. That means before planting, treat the set with insecticides. We can go for imidacloprid or chlorpyrifos. Remember the dose. The dose is slightly different over here. Imidacloprid, it is recommended for set treatment. It is recommended at the rate of 4 ml per 10 liter. And chlorpyrifos, it is recommended at the rate of 5 ml per liter. That is 50 ml per 10 liter. So the dose usually chlorpyrifos we recommended at 2.5 ml per liter. Here it is 5 ml per liter or 50 ml per 10 liter. This is for set treatment. That means before planting, sets will be dipped in this insecticide solution. So once you have planted, if there is again termite infestation, you can drench the sets. If you have planted it in a furrow, then you can, in the furrow, you can drench the sets. Over the sets, you can pour insecticide solution. Here also again you can use imidacloprid and chlorpyrifos, the same recommendation, that is 4 ml per 10 liter or 5 ml per liter of chlorpyrifos. Or we can use two more insecticides such as chlorantraniliprole, which is recommended at the rate of 5 ml per 10 liter. Usually for rice and all, we chlorantraniliprole we recommended at the rate of 3 ml per 10 liter. Here the dose is slightly different. It is 5 ml per 10 liter, or we can go for a synthetic pyrethroid bifenthrin, which is recommended at the rate of 2 ml per liter or 20 ml per 10 liter. So flood the field before planting so that it will reduce termite infestation at the immediately after planting. We can go for set treatment with imidacloprid or chlorpyrifos, or once you have planted, drench the sets with imidacloprid, chlorpyrifos, chlorantraniliprole or bifenthrin. Okay. Next, we will move on to another pest which we have studied earlier, that is white grub, Holotrichia consanguinea. This is a very common pest, white grub. I told you the infestation of white grub in Padanakad campus and all that we have discussed. So we have discussed about its annual life cycle. That means its life cycle gets from egg to adult. It takes 1 year. So that's why it is called as, it is having a 1 year life cycle. The adults emerge with the pre-monsoon showers. So by May, June, with the receipt of monsoon showers, the adult starts emerging. Hence, it is called as May June beetles also. Remember, it is also called as May June beetles. It is usually asked in exam. So, because of the emergence of adults in May June, they are called as May June beetles. The adults come, mate, lay their eggs in the soil, and the grubs will be active from July to September. What the grubs will do is it will be remaining under the soil and feeds on the roots, voraciously feeds on the roots. As the roots are damaged, there won't be any translocation of nutrients or absorption of nutrients. So the plant starts yellowing and slowly the plant starts wilting. Yellowing of the leaves, wilting of the leaf, followed by complete drying of the plant. So initially it will be yellowing, followed by drying up of the leaf, wilting of the leaf, and complete drying of the plant. As the entire root system is damaged, fed by the grubs, similar to termites, it can be easily pulled out because there won't be any roots. All the roots will be fed by the grubs, and as the plants lack any root system, it will be easily lodged. So lodging of the canes is another symptom. So white grub, it is a pest which is having annual life cycle wherein the adults emerge during with the pre-monsoon showers. Hence it is called as May-June beetle. It mates, lays eggs in the soil. Grub starts to feed on the roots. Because of the heavy feeding of the root, there will be yellowing of the leaves followed by wilting of the leaf and drying up of the plant. As the roots are damaged, it can be easily pulled out, and there will be lodging of the canes due to the lack of roots in the plant. This is the beetle. You might have seen this. It comes to your home immediately after monsoon showers. നമ്മൾ വീട്ടിൽ സാധാരണ കാണുന്ന വണ്ടുകളാണ് ലൈറ്റിലേക്ക് വൈകുന്നേരം ലൈറ്റിലേക്ക് വരുന്നത്. It gets attracted to light in the evenings. Usually we get this kind of beetles immediately after the monsoon days. Can someone identify this leaf? Which plant is it? Anyone? Yes, neem. Good. So this adults, after emergence from the soil, it prefers to congregate on the plants such as neem. So it gets if you have a neem tree in the field, all the adults will be congregating on the neem tree immediately after the emergence. So one management strategy is to shake the neem tree and collect the adults and destroy. So that is why specifically it is this picture is kept, because it gets congregated on neem leaves. This is the damage. Sometimes it can be confused with termites, but termites we can see termite mounds and all. So this is the C-shaped grubs, the scarabiform grubs. This is the adult. You can see there won't be any roots on the plants. Coming to the management of root crop rotation, if the field is flooded, in rice, as you all know, for about 2 to 3 months, the entire wheat field will be in flooded condition. This flooded condition, flooding means anaerobic condition. There won't be any air circulation in the soil. It will be an anaerobic condition. This root grub doesn't have any ability to respire from water. So all the grubs will get killed if you are flooding the field for a longer time. A shorter flooding, it won't give any desired result. So in the case of paddy, we'll be puddling the field, we'll be flooding the field for about 2 to 3 months. Then it is an excellent crop rotation strategy for managing root grubs. Provide irrigation. Providing irrigation is one strategy because if you provide irrigation, even if the roots are completely eaten away by the grubs, new fresh roots will start emerging. This is to enhance the plant growth and to have more roots so that the plant gets enough nutrients. Then after harvesting, go for deep plowing because this is a soil pest. The grubs are remaining in the soil. So if you plow the field thoroughly, the grubs will be exposed, the birds will be picking up, and it will get killed. Avoid rattoning in affected areas because if you ratton the crop, it will be more severe. So it is if there is a root grub infestation, it is better to go for a crop rotation with paddy. After harvest, go for thorough plowing and provide irrigation. That is for enhancing the health of the crop. And as I told you earlier, with the pre-monsoon showers, the adults will get attracted to light. So we can go for light trapping of the adults because adults are positively phototropic. That means it gets attracted to light. So we can go for light trapping only in May, June because only at that period the adults emerges. And I told you it gets congregated in the adults get congregated in trees like me. We can shake the trees, collect and destroy the adults. And one fungal pathogen, entomopathogenic fungi, Beauveria brocniati, is found to be effective against white grub. We can use it as soil runs, but it's not that effective in soil. It has huge capacity to survive. It's not that Beauveria brocniati is not an effective pathogen. It is that the survival ability of these root grubs are very high. What we have experienced is that if you drench some insecticide on the soil, usually we drench the insecticide at the rate of 5 liters per plant. It is roughly enough to wet the soil for about, say, hardly 1 inch or 2 inch maximum. So what the root grub will do, it will move deeper into the soil. Deeper into the soil, it will escape the toxicity of the pesticide. After 2 to 3 weeks, whatever the pesticide we apply, its toxicity will decrease over time. After 2 to 3 weeks, it comes up again and starts feeding on the root. So it's very difficult. In the same way, if Beauveria brocniati is also there, it escapes the infestation if it goes deep into the soil. So in field level, laboratory it is effective, but in field level, it's not that effective. So we can go for crop rotation with paddy, provide irrigation, then go for after harvest, go for a deep plowing. In the case of infested areas, avoid rattooning. Then like provide light trapping, collect the adults from trees such as neem and use of entomopathogenic fungi, Beauveria brocniati. These are the management practices for root crop. So these two are the subterranean pests of sugarcane. Now we are moving on to sucking pests. We have a 4 or 5 sucking pests. And one major sucking pest is woolly aphid, Serota vacuna lanigera. I haven't studied this pest when I was doing my UG program because at that time it was not considered a pest at all. But because of the changing cultural practices, it became very serious pest from especially from Maharashtra onwards. And now it's seen in almost all sugarcane growing tracts. So it emerged as a serious pest in 2002 onwards. Unlike other aphids, it looks similar to a mealybug. Have you seen a mealybug? How many of you have seen a mealybug live on a crop? Because we are unable to conduct the practicals. Yes, Sona has seen it. Only one. Yes, few. Just if you have seen a mealybug, just a minute. Teacher class la ഒരു 15 minute. If you have seen a mealybug, you can you might have observed that the bugs will be covered with a white waxy coating, white waxy secretion. So similar to that, this aphids we don't usually see this kind of white waxy flocculent secretion and all. Here in the case of aphid also we have this kind of white aphids will be covered with white waxy flocculent secretion. That's why it is called as woolly aphid. The body is covered with white waxy secretion. So usually these aphids are seen on the undersurface of the leaf. Normal case also, except for cowpea aphid and all, most of the aphids prefer the undersurface of the leaf. So here also aphids are seen on the undersurface of the leaf. The aphids initially seen on either side of the midrib, on the undersurface of the leaf on either side of the midrib. Later on it completely covers the undersurface of the. Initially it will be on either side of the, along the midrib it will be there, but later on as the infestation increases it completely covers the undersurface of the leaf. As it is a sucking pest, as you all know, it will secrete, it will excrete. What it will excrete? A sucking pest will excrete honeydew. Yes, good. It will excrete honeydew. This honeydew will fall over the upper surface of the leaf. The entire upper surface, good. Entire upper surface will be covered with sooty mold. And because of the sooty mold growth on the leaf surface, photosynthesis will be affected and yield will be affected. So this is an aphid which is covered with white waxy flocculent secretion. It will be seen on the undersurface of the leaf, initially on either side of midrib, but later on it covers the entire undersurface of the leaf. It sucks the sap, adults and nymphs, and it excretes honeydew. And the honeydew, once it falls over the leaf surface, it will lead to the formation of sooty mold. And high humidity with intermittent rain favors the buildup of this pest. High humidity favors the buildup of the pest. And I told you initially that certain cultural practices favored the buildup of this pest. Earlier it was not a pest. A few cultural practices, excess irrigation, then high levels of nitrogen, and then closer planting, dense crop canopy. If we are planting the crop closer, all these things, cultural practices favors the buildup of woolly aphid. Aphid, excess nitrogen, excess irrigation, and closer planting. So this is with respect to woolly aphid. We will see the management. Normally, so before that I will show. Here you can see this is the undersurface of the leaf. This is the midrib. Initially, it is in on either surface of the midrib, either side of the midrib. And you can see the entire upper leaf surface is covered by sooty mold, completely blackish in nature. See here you can see on either side of the midrib, you can see aphids covered with white waxy flocculent secretion. We can see the close-up of it, this white waxy secretion. So coming to the management, in sugarcane sucking pest, we try to rely heavily on biological control programs because use of pesticides is difficult in the case of sugarcane once it is in the later stage. So try to avoid the transport of infested material as or green tops as fodder. See, this leaves of sugarcane is used as a fodder for cattle. So if one person is transporting infested leaf from one area to another, he is transporting the pest also. So try to avoid the transport of infested material or green tops as fodder. Then usually the lower leaves will be affected. So the detrashing and destruction of affected leaves is another strategy. Remove the affected leaves and destroy it. Then as I told you, avoid excess irrigation, avoid excess nitrogen application, and close-up planting. Then we have to monitor the pest population weekly, so that if there is an increase in pest population, you have to take control measure. So avoid transportation of infested planting material as well as fodder material, removal of the affected leaves, detrashing, then avoid excess nitrogen, excess water irrigation, and closer planting, and monitor the pest population. Coming to the biological control, remember here we have certain unique natural enemies for this pest. We haven't seen much of any lepidopteran predators as biological control agents. Here, in this case of sugarcane woolly aphid, we have a lepidopteran insect which is predating on this woolly aphid. The family is Pyralidae, so it is a pyralid predator. The name is Diapha ephidivora. Diapha ephidivora. So this is unique. You have to remember this is a lepidopteran predator. So lepidopteran, this larvae of this Diapha ephidivora feeds on this sugarcane woolly aphid. We can mass culture it. We can release this Diapha ephidivora cocoons. That means pupae. Pupae of Diapha ephidivora at the rate of 1,000 cocoons per hectare. So this pyralid predator is very much successful. Diapha ephidivora we can use at the rate of 1,000 cocoons per hectare. Then another neuropteran is also effective. Neuropteran, that is Micromus, another predator. Micromus is also effective at the rate of 2,500 per hectare. In those areas where this woolly aphid is a serious issue, they have biocontrol labs which multiply Diapha ephidivora and Micromus because they are extremely effective against sugarcane woolly aphid. Then there is one parasitoid which is naturally occurring, Encarsia flavoscutullum. It's not mass multiplied because mass multiplying Encarsia is a slightly difficult thing. So Encarsia flavoscutullum is a naturally occurring parasitoid of sugarcane woolly aphid. And as we have this Diapha, this Micromus and all, and Encarsia and all are even we can release it, or it is present naturally in the field. So we try to avoid excess use of pesticides because use of pesticides will destroy this natural enemies also. So if there is a aphid infestation in a particular locality, we spray only that area. That is called a spot application of pesticide. We can go for spraying of soap solution. Remember, in those pests such as mealybugs, woolly aphids, etc., which have a waxy coating over its body, we can go for a spray of soap solution because soap solution will destroy this waxy coating over this mealybugs as well as woolly aphid. Once this waxy coating is removed by soap solution, then the insect can be easily predated or parasitized by natural enemies. So simple spraying of, remember this, if we have a mealybug infestation, usually that is the one which we normally encounter here. So go for a spray of soap solution. It will remove all the waxy coating and we can reduce the pest population. And if it is severe, we can go for pesticides such as acephate and dimethoate. Acephate is recommended at the rate of 2 gram per liter. Dimethoate is 2 ml per liter. And leave refugia while spraying. Refugia is nothing but if we have a 1 acre of area which is infested with woolly aphid, we won't spray the entire area. We will leave 5 cents of area unsprayed. That 5 cents of area which is remaining unsprayed is called as refugia. This is a refugia for the multiplication of natural enemies, so that the natural enemy won't get killed by the pesticide spray. So that is called as refugia strategy. That means instead of spraying the entire area, we will leave a small area unsprayed to help in the multiplication of natural enemies, so that the natural enemy population is not affected. So avoid transportation of infested planting material as well as fodder. Then detrashing and destruction of affected leaves. Avoid excess fertilization, excess irrigation, closer spacing, etc. Then monitor the pest population correctly. Release the lepidopteran predator, the Diapha ephidivora at the rate of 1,000 cocoons per hectare. Then we can also release another neuropterin predator, Micromus. Then we have Encarsia flavoscutullum, which is naturally occurring. You can go for spot application with spraying of 2% soap solution, acephate or dimethoate. And by spraying, remember to leave some area unsprayed as refuge. So this is sugarcane mule. We can see this larvae of Dipha aphidivora feeding on this aphids. Here you can see that aphid, and here you can see the aphids are completely covered with white waxy coating, and you can see the Dipha aphidivora larvae feeding voraciously feeding on these aphids. I had heard from a few scientists from Maharashtra that this Dipha aphidivora is an extremely effective predator of woolly aphid. It feeds voraciously. It can drastically bring down the population of woolly aphid. You can see this. The entire leaf which was infested with woolly aphid is completely eaten away by woolly aphid. Dipha aphidivora, sorry. And this is the neuropteran predator Micromus. Coming to the next sucking pest, that is Pyrrhilla purpusilla. Does anyone remember the family of Pyrrhilla? It's a unique family. Anyone? No. The family is Lophopidae. Lophopidae. I typed it. Okay. The family is Lophopidae. One peculiar feature with this insect is that it has two anal filaments at the tip of the abdomen. I will show that picture then it will be. See this. This is a bug with two anal filaments. You can see just like two tails longer than the body of that bug. So this is a very unique pest, which is very common. It's a minor pest. Sometimes only, whenever we go for excess irrigation, excess manuring, then only this pest will get severe. Otherwise, the pest is not that severe. So excess irrigation, waterlogging, heavy irrigation, excess nitrogen, excess irrigation, lodging of canes, then those varieties which have broad succulent leaves are susceptible for this Pyrrhilla, sugarcane Pyrrhilla infestation. Just like woolly aphid, avoid excess nitrogen, avoid waterlogging, avoid lodging of the cane, and avoid all those varieties which have broad succulent leaf to prevent Pyrrhilla infestation. As you all know, this is sucking pest. Nymphs and adults suck sap from the leaves, and the eggs are laid on the undersurface of the leaves, and it will be covered with white waxy filament. I will show that picture later. The eggs are laid on the undersurface of the leaf, and the eggs will be covered with a white waxy filament. I told you it has a pair of anal filaments, and as it is a sucking pest, it will excrete honeydew, and the leaf surface will have sooty mold growth, leading to reduced photosynthesis. So, excess irrigation, excess nitrogen, lodging of the canes, varieties with broad succulent leaves are extremely susceptible. Then eggs are laid on the undersurface of the leaf, and it will be covered by white waxy filaments. It has two anal filaments, and it excretes honeydew, leading to the formation of sooty mold. This is the eggs laid on the leaves, and it is covered with white waxy filament. This is the insect I have shown you. This is the nymph. It has anal filament. This is the adult. The adult, see the head, it is slightly elongated. So that's a typical feature of Lophopidae. Then coming to the management, as I told you, avoid excess nitrogen, excess irrigation, lodging of canes, etc. Then, as you can see, as you have seen the earlier picture, we can easily identify the eggs of this insect. So it can be easily collected and destroyed. Here again, we have a Lepidopteran natural enemy. It's not a predator, it's an ectoparasitoid. Ectoparasitoid means it remains outside the insect and feeds on the larvae, feeds on the insect. It's an ectoparasite, it doesn't enter into the host insect, remains outside. So we don't normally see a Lepidopteran predator and a parasitoid. It's a Lepidoptera nectoparasitoid. The name is Epiricania melanoleuca. Remember this Epiricania melanoleuca. We can release at the rate of 8,000 to 10,000 cocoons pupae or 8 lakh to 10 lakhs eggs per hectare. So Lepidoptera nectoparasitoid Epiricania melanoleuca, we can release at the rate of 8,000 to 10,000 cocoons or 8 lakh to 10 lakh eggs per hectare. We can spray acephate or dimethoate, just like in the case of polyaphyt. I may go a bit fast because I will try to complete. This is Epiricania melanoleuca, the adult of Epiricania melanoleuca. See the Epiricania melanoleuca laying eggs near to the nymphs of Pyrrhilla purpusilla. This is the Pyrrhilla purpusilla nymph carrying the larvae of Epiricania. This is the larvae of Epiricania. This is an ectoparasitoid. It remains outside the nymph and it feeds on this nymph. The next pest is whitefly. It's seen in waterlogged saline soils and field with poor hygiene. That means the crops which are not managed very well in waterlogged condition in saline soils and fields with poor hygiene. As usual with any sucking pest, nymphs and adults suck sap from the undersurface of the leaf. Because of the sucking of the sap, we have on the upper surface, we have yellowish spots and sooty mold growth. Again, for management, we can go for acephate and dimethoate. Nymphs and adults suck sap while remaining on the undersurface of the leaf. We can see yellow spots on the upper surface and again sooty mold growth. This is whitefly. This is early stage nymph. Sometimes you may be wondering, this doesn't look whitefly. You might have seen whiteflies in chili, white tomato, etc. That is mostly the adult. These are the nymphs. This is the May whitefly here, Neomascalia bergi. It's whitefly in the case of sugarcane is Neomascalia bergi. The other whiteflies which you normally see in vegetables and all is Bemisia tabaci. So that's why it is slightly different. These are the nymphs. Then mealybugs, sometimes it is serious. It is serious in those varieties which are tight leaf sheath. That means if you have tight leaf sheath, the mealybugs can remain inside that leaf sheath. It will remain protected. So it is severe in those varieties with tight leaf sheath. It has sooty mold again as it is a sucking pest. And for management, we can go for detrashing and maintain field hygiene. So this is mealybugs seen in sugarcane. These are the symptoms. Then the last one, that is black bug Cavaliarius sueti. This is a very minor pest, severe only in a ratoon crop. Because of the sucking of sap by nymphs and adults, there will be yellowing of the leaves and brownish spots, irregular brownish spots can be seen. This later on, after yellowing of the leaves, we can see it, irregular brown spots, and the tips and margins of the leaves dry up gradually, and the entire plant may die. The growth of the plant is affected, quality of juice is affected, and all those leaves, for management, we can remove all those leaves which are infested by black bug and destroy it, irrigate the field or spray with insecticide. This is a very minor pest, I just included it. So here again, the leaf nymphs and adults suck sap. Unlike the other pests, it leads to drying up of the leaves from the leaf tip and margin. These are aphids. I'm not going in detail because it's a minor pest. Aphids, you can see the cornicles. Scales, again, in some cases, scales are a serious pest in sugarcane. Some areas alone, not always. So with that, I have finished sugarcane. I think I have completed all of my portions. Any questions, any clarifications?